I stared at the life insurance policy, my heart racing as I realized my daughter's intentions. It was as if the past 8 years of silence between us seemed to fade away as she gazed at the policy with an unsettling hunger. Her eyes, once bright and full of love, now seemed cold and calculating. I thought back to the day she walked out of my life, leaving me with only tears and regret. I remembered the countless times I tried to reach out to her, to bridge the gap between us, but she never responded. The pain and sadness I felt during those years were overwhelming, but I never gave up hope that one day she would come back to me. But now, as I looked at her, I saw a stranger. A person consumed by greed and a desire for power. Her voice, once full of love and laughter, now cut through me like a knife. "You're going to regret this," she hissed. "I'll take everything." I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized that my daughter was not the person I thought she was. She was a master manipulator, using her charm and beauty to get what she wanted. And what she wanted was my life insurance policy, worth $200,000. I tried to reason with her, to explain that the policy was meant for her benefit, to secure her future. But she wouldn't listen. She was too far gone, consumed by her own greed and ambition. I realized that I had to take action, to protect myself and my assets from her. But as I looked into her eyes, I saw something that gave me pause. A glimmer of sadness, a hint of regret. It was as if she knew that she was crossing a line, that she was betraying the one person who had always been there for her. I decided to take a chance, to try and reach out to her one last time. I asked her to sit down, to talk to me about what was going on. But as we sat down, I realized that it might be too late. The damage had been done, and I wasn't sure if I could ever trust her again. As we sat there, the tension between us was palpable. I knew that I had to be careful, that I had to protect myself from her. But at the same time, I couldn't help but feel a sense of sadness and loss. I had lost my daughter, the person I loved and cherished most in the world. And as I looked at her, I knew that I had to make a choice. I could either give in to her demands, or I could stand up for myself and fight for what was rightfully mine. The decision was not an easy one, but I knew that I had to do what was best for me. As I sat there, weighing my options, I couldn't help but wonder what the future held. Would I be able to reconcile with my daughter, or would our relationship be forever damaged? Only time would tell, but one thing was certain, I would not go down without a fight. As I sat there, weighing my options, I couldn't help but think about the past. About the times my daughter and I had shared, the laughter, the tears, the memories. It was hard to believe that it had come to this. That my own flesh and blood was trying to take advantage of me. I looked at her, trying to see if there was any sign of the daughter I once knew. But all I saw was a stranger, a person who was determined to get what she wanted, no matter the cost. "Listen, I know things have been tough between us," I said, trying to reason with her. "But this isn't the way to solve our problems. We can work through this, together." But she just laughed, a cold, mirthless sound. "You're just trying to stall," she said. "You're trying to keep me from getting what's mine." I felt a surge of anger at her words, but I tried to keep my cool. I knew that if I lost my temper, things would only escalate. "I'm not trying to stall," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "I'm trying to protect myself. And I'm trying to protect you, too. From yourself." She raised an eyebrow at that, a look of surprise on her face. "Protect me from myself," she repeated. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that you're letting your greed consume you," I said. "You're letting it destroy our relationship, and you're letting it destroy you. And I don't want to see that happen." She laughed again, but this time there was a hint of uncertainty in her voice. "You're just trying to manipulate me," she said. "You're trying to make me feel guilty." But I shook my head. I'm not trying to manipulate you, I said. I'm trying to make you see sense. You're throwing away our relationship, and you're throwing away your own future. And for what? For a little bit of money. She looked at me, her eyes flashing with anger. You don't understand, she said. You don't know what it's like to struggle, to have to fight for every little thing. You've always had it easy, Dad. You've always had the money, the power, the influence. But I've had to fight for everything I have. And I'm not going to let you take that away from me. I felt a pang of sadness at her words, because I knew that she was right. I had always had it easy, and I had never had to struggle like she had. But that didn't excuse her behavior, and it didn't justify her trying to take advantage of me. I understand that you've had to fight for everything, I said. But that doesn't give you the right to take advantage of me. And it doesn't give you the right to destroy our relationship. She looked at me, her eyes cold and hard. I'm not destroying our relationship, she said. You're the one who's been destroying it, all these years. You're the one who's been neglecting me, ignoring me, taking me for granted. And now it's my turn to take what's mine. I felt a surge of anger at her words, because I knew that they were a lie. I had always been there for her, always supported her, always loved her. And I had never taken her for granted. But I knew that arguing with her was pointless. She had made up her mind, and she was determined to get what she wanted. And I was determined to stop her. I stood up, my heart pounding in my chest. I'm not going to let you do this, I said. I'm not going to let you take advantage of me. And I'm not going to let you destroy our relationship. She looked at me, a smile spreading across her face. Oh, I think you will, she said. I think you'll do exactly what I want you to do. Because you're a coward, Dad. You're a weak, spineless coward. And you'll do anything to avoid a fight. I felt a surge of anger at her words, and I knew that I had to take action. I couldn't just sit back and let her walk all over me. I had to stand up for myself, and I had to fight back. But as I looked at her, I saw something that gave me pause. A glimmer of uncertainty in her eyes, a hint of doubt. And I knew that I had to use that to my advantage. I'm not a coward, I said, my voice calm and steady. And I'm not going to back down. But I am willing to listen to you, to hear you out. And I'm willing to work with you, to find a solution that works for both of us. She looked at me, her eyes narrowing. What do you propose? She asked, her voice cautious. I smiled, a plan forming in my mind. I propose that we sit down, and we talk about this, I said. We talk about the policy, and we talk about our relationship. And we find a way to resolve this, once and for all. She looked at me, her eyes searching. And for a moment, I thought I saw a glimmer of hope. A glimmer of a chance that we could work things out, that we could find a way to heal our relationship. But then her face hardened, and she shook her head. No, she said. I don't think that's going to work. I think it's too late for that. I felt a surge of sadness at her words, because I knew that she was right. It was too late for us, too late for our relationship. And all I could do was try to protect myself, and try to move on. But as I looked at her, I saw something that gave me a sense of unease. A look of determination in her eyes, a look of resolve. And I knew that she was not going to give up easily. She was going to fight for what she wanted, no matter what it took. And I was going to have to fight back. As I looked at her, I knew that I had to be prepared for anything. I had to be prepared for her to do whatever it took to get what she wanted. And I had to be prepared to defend myself. I stood up, my heart pounding in my chest. I'm going to go get the policy, I said. And then we can talk about it. She nodded, a look of anticipation on her face. I turned and walked out of the room, my mind racing. I knew that I had to be careful, that I had to think clearly. I couldn't let her get the better of me. I walked into my office, my eyes scanning the room. I knew that I had to find the policy, and I had to find it quickly. I started searching through my files, my hands shaking slightly. I was so focused on finding the policy that I didn't even notice her following me into the room. "Aha," she said, her voice low and menacing. "I don't think you should be doing that." I spun around, my heart racing. She was standing right behind me, her eyes fixed on the files in my hand. "What are you talking about?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. "You're not going to find the policy," she said. "Because I already have it." I felt a surge of anger at her words, but I tried to keep my cool. I knew that I couldn't let her get the better of me. "What are you talking about?" I repeated. "I'm talking about the fact that I've been watching you," she said. "I've been watching you for weeks, studying your routine. And I know exactly where you keep the policy." I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized what she was saying. She had been spying on me, watching me. And she had been planning this all along. "You're not going to get away with this," I said, trying to keep my voice firm. But she just laughed. "Oh, I think I am," she said. "I think I'm going to get exactly what I want." She reached into her pocket and pulled out the policy, holding it up for me to see. I felt a surge of anger and frustration, but I knew that I had to keep my cool. I couldn't let her get the better of me. "What do you want?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. "I want the money," she said. "I want the $200,000. And I'm going to get it, no matter what it takes." I felt a surge of determination at her words. I was not going to let her get the better of me. I was not going to let her take the money. I stood up, my eyes fixed on hers. "I'm not going to give you the money," I said. "I'm not going to let you have it." She smiled, a cold and calculating smile. "We'll see about that," she said. And with that, she turned and walked out of the room, the policy still clutched in her hand. I watched her go, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew that I had to do something, that I had to stop her. But I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to stop her. All I could do was stand there, frozen in fear, as she walked away with the policy. I knew that I had to act fast, that I had to do something to stop her. But I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to start. All I could do was stand there, my mind racing, as I tried to think of a plan. And then, suddenly, I heard a noise. A noise that made my heart skip a beat. It was the sound of the front door closing, followed by the sound of footsteps outside. She was leaving, and she was taking the policy with her. I knew that I had to act fast, that I had to do something to stop her. And so, I did the only thing I could think of. I ran after her. I ran as fast as I could, my heart pounding in my chest. I had to catch up to her, had to stop her from leaving with the policy. I burst through the front door, slamming it open and racing out into the cool evening air. I could see her ahead of me, walking quickly down the sidewalk. I picked up speed, my legs pumping as I chased after her. She glanced back over her shoulder, saw me coming, and quickened her pace. I could see the policy clutched in her hand, and my heart sank. She was getting away. I pushed myself harder, my lungs burning as I ran. I could hear my own footsteps pounding the pavement, could feel the sweat dripping down my face. But I didn't care. I had to catch her. I had to stop her from taking the policy. I was gaining on her, I could see that. She was starting to tire, her pace slowing as I closed in. I could see the fear in her eyes, could see the desperation. She knew I was catching up to her, knew she couldn't outrun me. And then, just as I was about to overtake her, she ducked into a nearby alleyway. I skidded to a stop, my eyes scanning the darkness of the alley. I could see her, just a faint outline in the shadows. She was trying to hide from me, trying to escape. But I knew I had her. I took a deep breath, my heart still racing from the chase. I walked slowly into the alley, my eyes fixed on her. "It's over," I said, my voice low and steady. "You can't outrun me. You can't hide from me." She looked up at me, her eyes flashing with anger. "I'll never give it to you," she spat. "I'll never let you have it." I smiled, a cold and calculating smile. "Oh, I think you will," I said. "I think you'll do exactly what I say." I took a step closer to her, my eyes fixed on hers. She backed away, her eyes darting back and forth. She was trapped, and she knew it. I took another step closer, my heart pounding in my chest. I could see the fear in her eyes, could see the desperation. She knew she was beaten. And then, just as I was about to reach out and grab her, she pulled out a small object from her pocket. It was a phone, and she was dialing a number. I felt a surge of fear as I realized what she was doing. She was calling for help. She was calling for someone to come and save her. I lunged at her, trying to grab the phone from her hand. But she was too quick. She held it out of my reach, her eyes flashing with triumph. "You'll never stop me," she said, her voice low and menacing. "You'll never take the policy from me." I felt a surge of anger at her words, but I knew I had to stay calm. I had to think clearly. I had to come up with a plan. And so, I did the only thing I could think of. I tried to reason with her. "Listen," I said, my voice calm and steady. "I know you're desperate. I know you'll do anything to get what you want. But think about what you're doing. Think about the consequences." She looked at me, her eyes cold and hard. "I've thought about it," she said. "I've thought about it a lot. And I know exactly what I'm doing." I felt a surge of fear at her words, but I knew I had to keep trying. I had to keep talking to her, had to keep trying to reason with her. And so, I kept talking. I kept talking, trying to get through to her. Trying to make her see sense. But she just laughed at me, her eyes flashing with triumph. She knew she had won. She knew she had beaten me. And then, just as I was about to give up, I heard a noise. A noise that made my heart skip a beat. It was the sound of footsteps, echoing down the alleyway. Someone was coming. Someone was coming to help her. I felt a surge of fear as I heard the footsteps getting closer and closer. I knew that whoever was coming was not here to help me. They were here to help her get away with the policy. I looked at her, and she was smiling. She was smiling because she knew she had won. She knew that she had outsmarted me and was going to get away with the policy. I tried to think of something to do, but my mind was a blank. I was frozen with fear, unable to move or think. The footsteps got closer and closer, and I could hear the sound of voices. They were talking, but I couldn't make out what they were saying. I didn't need to, though. I knew that they were here to help her get away with the policy. Suddenly, a group of people appeared at the end of the alleyway. They were all dressed in black, and they looked like they meant business. They were all staring at me, and I could see the hostility in their eyes. I knew that I was in trouble. The woman who had been trying to steal the policy from me smiled again, and then she walked over to the group of people. She handed one of them the policy, and then she turned and walked away. The group of people turned and followed her, leaving me standing alone in the alleyway. I was shaken, but I knew that I had to do something. I couldn't just stand there and do nothing. I had to try and get the policy back. I took a deep breath and then I started to run. I ran as fast as I could, following the group of people as they made their way through the streets. I was determined to get the policy back, no matter what it took. I ran for what felt like hours, my heart pounding in my chest. I was getting tired, but I didn't care. I had to keep going. I had to get the policy back. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I saw them turn into a building. I followed them, my heart racing with excitement. I was getting close. I was going to get the policy back. I burst through the door, ready to confront them. But as I entered the building, I realized that I was in trouble. The building was full of people, all of them dressed in black. They were all staring at me, and I could see the hostility in their eyes. I knew that I was in grave danger. I tried to run, but it was too late. They were too quick. They grabbed me and held me down, and then they started to laugh. I was trapped, and I knew that I was in trouble. I tried to struggle, but it was no use. They were too strong. They held me down, and then they started to talk. "You're a foolish old man," one of them said. "You think you can stop us? You think you can get in our way?" I tried to speak, but my voice was muffled. I was trapped, and I knew that I was in grave danger. They continued to talk, their voices echoing in my ears. "We're going to take everything from you," one of them said. "We're going to take your money, your house, your life. And there's nothing you can do to stop us." I was filled with fear, and I knew that I was in trouble. I was trapped, and I didn't know how to escape. I was at their mercy, and I knew that I was in grave danger. And then, just as I thought things couldn't get any worse, I heard a voice. A voice that I recognized. A voice that filled me with even more fear. "Hello, old man," the voice said. "I see you're still trying to cause trouble." I tried to look up, but my head was being held down. I couldn't see who was speaking, but I knew the voice. It was a voice that I had heard before. A voice that I had hoped never to hear again. The voice was low and menacing, and it sent shivers down my spine. I tried to struggle, but it was no use. I was trapped, and I knew that I was in grave danger. The voice continued to speak, its words dripping with malice. "You're a stubborn old man, I'll give you that," it said. "But you're no match for us. We're the ones with the power, and you're just a weak old man trying to stand in our way." I tried to speak, but my voice was muffled. I was starting to feel hopeless, like I was trapped in a nightmare from which I couldn't wake up. The voice continued to taunt me, its words cutting deep into my soul. "You think you can stop us," it said. "You think you can take on the system and win. You're just a foolish old man, clinging to a lost cause." I felt a surge of anger at the voice's words, but it was quickly replaced by fear. I knew that I was in grave danger, and I didn't know how to escape. The voice continued to speak, its words dripping with malice. "We're going to break you, old man," it said. "We're going to break your spirit, and we're going to take everything from you. And there's nothing you can do to stop us." I was starting to feel like I was trapped in a never-ending nightmare, with no escape from the terror that was unfolding around me. The voice continued to speak, its words cutting deep into my soul. "You should have stayed out of this, old man," it said. "You should have kept your nose out of our business. But now, it's too late. You're in too deep, and you're going to have to pay the price." I felt a surge of fear at the voice's words, and I knew that I was running out of time. I had to think of something, anything, to get out of this situation. But my mind was a blank, and I couldn't think of anything. I was trapped, and I knew that I was in grave danger. The voice continued to speak, its words dripping with malice. "You're going to regret ever crossing us, old man," it said. "You're going to regret ever trying to stand in our way." I felt a surge of anger at the voice's words, but it was quickly replaced by fear. I knew that I was in grave danger, and I didn't know how to escape. The voice continued to speak, its words cutting deep into my soul. "We're going to make you pay, old man," it said. "We're going to make you pay for your foolishness." I was starting to feel like I was trapped in a living hell, with no escape from the terror that was unfolding around me. The voice continued to speak, its words dripping with malice. "You should have stayed out of this, old man," it said. "You should have kept your nose out of our business. But now, it's too late. You're in too deep, and you're going to have to pay the price." I felt a surge of fear at the voice's words, and I knew that I was running out of time. I had to think of something, anything, to get out of this situation. But my mind was a blank, and I couldn't think of anything. I was trapped, and I knew that I was in grave danger. Suddenly, the voice stopped speaking, and there was a moment of silence. I was left alone with my thoughts, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I was in grave danger. I was trapped, and I didn't know how to escape. And then, just as I thought things couldn't get any worse, I heard the sound of footsteps. They were heavy, deliberate footsteps, and they were getting closer and closer. I knew that I was in trouble, and I didn't know how to get out of it. The footsteps stopped right outside the room, and I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. I was trapped, and I knew that I was in grave danger. As the footsteps stopped outside the room, I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. I was trapped, and I knew that I was in grave danger. But then, something unexpected happened. The door to the room burst open, and a figure rushed in. It was a woman, and she was carrying a small device in her hand. She rushed over to me and began to frantically press buttons on the device. Suddenly, the room was filled with a bright light, and I felt a surge of energy run through my body. I was free. I was finally free. The woman turned to me and smiled. "I'm so sorry it took me so long to get to you," she said. "I've been tracking these people for weeks, and I finally found you." I was stunned. I didn't know what to say. But then, I saw the look of determination in her eyes, and I knew that she was the one who had been working to bring these people down. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice shaking with emotion. "My name is Sarah," she said. "I'm a former cop, and I've been working to take down this organization for years. I finally got a tip that they were holding you here, and I came as fast as I could." I felt a surge of gratitude towards her. She had saved me, and I didn't know how to thank her. But then, I saw the look of sadness in her eyes, and I knew that there was more to the story. "What's wrong?" I asked. "I'm so sorry," she said. "I was too late to save your daughter. She was killed in the explosion that destroyed your house." I felt a wave of grief wash over me. My daughter was gone, and I would never see her again. But then, I saw the look of determination in Sarah's eyes, and I knew that she was going to make sure that justice was served. "We're going to get them," she said. "We're going to make them pay for what they've done." And with that, she turned and walked out of the room, leaving me to process the emotions that were swirling inside of me. I was filled with grief and anger, but I was also filled with a sense of hope. Hope that justice would be served, and that those who had hurt me and my family would be punished. As I sat there, trying to process everything that had happened, I heard the sound of sirens outside. The police had arrived, and they were taking the members of the organization into custody. I felt a sense of satisfaction, knowing that justice was finally being served. And then, I saw Sarah walking back into the room, a smile on her face. "It's over," she said. "They're going to pay for what they've done." I nodded, feeling a sense of closure. It was finally over, and I could start to heal. I stood up, and Sarah walked over to me. She put her hand on my shoulder, and I felt a sense of comfort. "You're safe now," she said. you're finally safe. And with that, I knew that I was going to be okay. I was going to heal, and I was going to move on. The experience had been traumatic, but I had made it through. And I knew that I would always be grateful to Sarah, the woman who had saved me. As I walked out of the room with Sarah, I felt a sense of hope. Hope that I would be able to rebuild my life, and hope that justice would be served. And as we walked, I saw the members of the organization being taken away in handcuffs. They were going to pay for what they had done, and I was finally going to get the closure that I deserved.